Hey everybody, welcome back to Dating to Win. Most people still think a romance scam is one person sitting behind a fake dating profile, pretending to be in love. But Erin West, our guest today, has spent years exposing what is really behind many of these scams. And what she has uncovered is much bigger than fake photos and stolen money. Erin is one of the foremost experts on romance scams, pig butchering, crypto fraud, and the Southeast Asian scam compounds where people may be trafficked, trapped, threatened, and forced to scam others. Before becoming one of the leading public voices on this issue, Erin spent more than 2 decades as a public prosecutor, and through that work, she began seeing cases that showed her this was not just individual scammers targeting lonely people. This was organized crime. It was fake investment platforms. It was cryptocurrency fraud. It was money laundering. And in some cases, it was human trafficking. So in this interview, I want to get behind the headlines and understand Erin's journey. How did she get pulled into this world? What does she know about pig butchering that the average person does not? And how do these scam organizations actually work? And what do dating app users, families, and victims need to understand before more lives are destroyed? Erin West, thank you for joining me today. I am so honored to have you on this program.
Well, I am delighted to be here, and I'm looking forward to a good conversation about the very real threat out there.
But first, before I get started, I have to say to our viewers, Erin is probably one of the most stylish people I have ever met. And I told her that before we started to record. Every time I've watched one of Erin's videos, I've watched her podcast, and I'd highly recommend to our audience to please look up Erin West, her videos, her work. It's amazing. But Erin is always dressed to the nines, and she always matches her glasses to her outfit, which I think is so vogue. All right, Erin, so let me ask you, you were a public prosecutor for years, and as a public prosecutor, you saw every crime imaginable. You saw crimes of passion. You saw money laundering. You saw AI fraud. You saw everything. Why did romance scams and pig butchering, why did the topic and those crimes particularly pull you in? What was it?
You know, it's funny. I spent a good chunk of my career doing sexual assault prosecution. And those are, to me, I think the most important cases that we do is protecting people, protecting a really vulnerable class of people who get taken advantage of. And I needed a little bit of a break after that. And so I asked my office, I'd like to do something less victim intensive. I think I'd like to do high-tech crime for a while. And they were like, great, put me on high-tech crime. And as soon as I got there, I came to realize that high-tech crime involves people getting their life savings stolen from them. And as a result, it creates a really different type of victim. There is something that is tragic about someone who trusted someone and made investments based on the suggestion of that person, and then had their entire net worth stolen from them. And I'm here to tell you there is nothing more compelling than trying to help that person understand what happened to them, to try and find any assets that might be able to be clawed back, and then to really understand what in the world is causing this. What is this scheme? So I will tell you, it's a fascinating and really understaffed piece of work that is happening all over the United States.
And you were talking about, I guess your introduction to this was probably 2018, 19?
Mm-hmm.
Back then, we didn't even know how to track cryptocurrency. Blockchains was Chinese language to us. So I imagine you really had some obstacles to overcome with some of the romance scam victims that walked through your door.
I was very fortunate. I worked with a high-tech task force, a California-based high-tech task force that was local detectives. And these guys were as curious as I am about everything. And when we got our first cases, we got some cases back in 2016 that involved cryptocurrency. Those detectives taught themselves. They figured out how to start tracing stuff on the blockchain. So that when we started seeing pig butchering cases come in 2022, this was not new to us. What was new to us was we were familiar with romance scams where somebody works on an oil rig, they need $10,000, $20,000. What we had never seen before 2022 was a scheme where people were losing every penny they had, and it was moving in cryptocurrency. And my team really took us a thought of what if we could? What if we could trace that? What if we could find out where these victims' money went? And what if we could get it back in their hands? And that's what we went from. We had a bit of a jump because we knew how to trace crypto, but we'd never done something like this before.
And I guess the problem also is there was no legislation or treaties that would allow you to work with some of the offshore issues that you were facing.
That's exactly right. And so what happened was we had to figure out how to get around a legal system that was written for bank wires or for movement of cash. And it was not set up for this at all. And so we put ourselves in a situation where we felt there was nothing we could do but figure out new ways to navigate it. A lot of law enforcement, even still today, says, hey, I'm not going to do crypto. We don't have the laws for it. I don't know how to do it. And we took the position of, you are a victim in Santa Clara County and this happened to you. We're going to figure out how to investigate it.
Very good. And when you were practicing as a prosecutor, were you able to recover funds for some of the victims?
We were. So our first
Wow.
victim came to us in 2022. He was a 30-year-old software engineer, and he had stolen from him $300,000, his entire net worth. And by the time he got to us, he was despondent. And so we said, let's make him our test case. Let's see if we called him by his initials, ASR. Let's see if we can get ASR's money back. And so we found his money. And his money was with Binance. And Binance exists outside the United States because it doesn't want to be subject to U.S. laws.
Of course.
And so we went to Binance and said, what would it take for you to release these funds to us, knowing that they're stolen? And they said, well, you don't have jurisdiction over us. But if you give us a signed court order, we will release those funds. And so there was the first opening of like, okay, this can be done. This can be done by local law enforcement, and we can ask an out-of-country exchange to give money back. And so they did. And so then by the end of 2022, we had helped 8 people get $1.5 million back. And by the end of 2023, we had helped 25 more people. And so it can be done.
So you basically became on your team the expert on romance scams, I would imagine, when you were working as a prosecutor.
I would say the detectives I worked with are definitely the experts, but together we developed an expertise of romance scams. Yes. And specifically pig butchering. How is this happening at scale? What is happening that is manipulating people into moving this kind of money?
It's amazing. Is there one case in particular, Erin, that made you say, okay, I'm going to hang up my law degree here as a prosecutor and I'm going to make this my life's journey?
I'll tell you what, I don't know if it was one case, but I'll give you some case examples that stuck
Please.
with me. I frequently get calls from adult children of people who are in scams, and they say, my mom called me and said that she needed help with the money for her mortgage on her condo. And I said, Mom, you don't have a mortgage on your condo. And she says, oh, now I do. And so, these scammers had talked her into getting a mortgage and handing over $200,000 to them. They'd stolen it from her. I could give you example after example of horrendous things and horrendous ways they've stolen money from people. But the more I talked to real people, the more I could see, oh my God, this is devastating. And then for me, the mic drop moments came when I came to find out that this was happening at scale in Southeast Asia, in massive compounds, and that the people on the other side of the screens were being trafficked to be there. And that's when I thought, well, this is more than I can handle from my role as a local prosecutor. I need to be able to speak freely about what's happening here. And to do that, I need to retire, and I need to start a nonprofit that allows me to use my voice to amplify what's happening here.
And that is Operation Shamrock.
It is.
Tell me how that came about. It's a nonprofit. Are you funding that yourself, or can we, the viewers, help you fund your journey?
Thank you so much for asking. I started Operation Shamrock because there was a concept that we were under attack. And that what could we do about it? Well, we could educate, we could seize money, and we could disrupt transnational organized crime. That's what we could do. And so I thought, well, I need to call this something. And so I thought, well, what is a Trinity type thing? What is it? What is something with 3 concepts? A shamrock. And there's an emoji for it. So fantastic. We'll call it Operation Shamrock. So I started it while I was still in the DA's office as a concept. And then when I left, I made it official. And we're funded by generous friends. We have a grant from Experian. We have some individual donors, and then we have people who go to our website and make a one-time donation. So we're at operationshamrock.org. And we exist for the purpose of doing those things that I just told you.
That's great. So if our viewers wanted to make a donation, that's where they would go to help you with this fight?
Definitely.
That's fantastic, Erin. And I recently saw that you were in Cambodia for a trip. Was that back, I guess, March, April?
It was actually in February. It was my second trip to Cambodia. And I went there. The first time I went there was life-changing for me. I got there and I found that the entire country was under construction, and that was February 2025. And what I saw was, this is the industry of Cambodia. It's everywhere, and it's completely whitewashed. You ask people, well, what are they doing in that building over there? And they say, oh, they do online. That's what they do over there.
That's how they refer to it, online.
Yeah. And I came to find out that scamming was making up more than half of the Cambodian GDP. And it became, right? It's mind blowing, right? Like, this is the industry. This is the industry of Southeast Asia.
That's just so hard to believe.
It is, until you think about how much money has been stolen from the United States alone year on year. And we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars. We're talking about numbers that are astronomical. And Matt, what's horrible is that it's not happening from major companies that can maybe, figure out how to be influential on Capitol Hill or how to stop the bleeding. It is happening household by household. It's happening to your cousin, my neighbor, my kid's soccer coach. And so they don't have a good means to collectively get together and march on Capitol Hill. They don't have
exactly
the ability to make change here. And the enemy also chose very, very cleverly. They chose a crime that is embarrassing to report. And so as a result, we don't know how big this is.
Well, I think it was reported last year, FBI statistics had it at 21 billion, but they only anticipate about 7 to 10% of the victims come forward, which is amazing, which I think are primarily females. The male number is unbelievable. So if I can get into statistics, because you are the expert here, how much of these scams, especially from these Southeast Asian compounds, are preying on U.S. citizens?
Thank you for that question, because it's interesting, and I continue to get new information on this all the time. So I'll say, when this first started back in 2019, 2020, it was Chinese human trafficked victims attacking the Chinese population, stealing a ton of money from China, until China said, no more. You cannot traffic our citizens, and you cannot come after our people financially. But it was financially devastating to China. And once China put their foot down, then it changed. And then they started coming after Americans. And to do that, they looked for people that spoke English. And then they started wholesale importing people who spoke English. So that is Ugandans, Kenyans. They were bringing them in to do language work. And so I would say a good chunk is American victims. I can tell you that there's also a major problem in Canada with Canadian victims, with victims in the UK, with victims in Australia, and now we're seeing Brazilians trafficked and Brazilians financially attacked. It's spreading. It's the best industry that ever was. It is incredibly lucrative, and people are making billions of dollars from doing it.
I in my studies and looking at all your information that you've put out on the internet, these scams seem larger in profit and in profit margins than drug dealing and human trafficking. And I know the numbers for human trafficking are just astronomical a year. But the takes, we interviewed a woman last week, and this wonderful, wonderful lady lost 1.6 million in a 6-month period of time. It's just heartbroken. And Erin, the one thing that shocks me, and I will get into this, I'm kind of jumping around today. Mm-hmm. Every time I talk to one of the victims, they say to me their biggest concern now is healing, but also the tax liability for the 401k loan that they took, or the profit on the house that they sold. It's just horrendous. There was a case recently, and the young woman's name was Colleen, and you may be familiar with this. It was out of the Dallas, Texas area, and she was involved in a romance scam where she unwittingly was laundering money for the cartel. It was a Secret Service and FBI operation, and they actually had brought charges against her. She was due to go to trial next month. She had already spent, I think she said, $310,000 in legal fees. Just the other day, they dropped all charges against her. Crazy. Why would they even be going after this woman? It's just crazy. Are you familiar with that? Have you heard about that case?
I'm not familiar with that specific case, but I do have a lot of thoughts on this. And I'll tell you, the first thought is let's just start with your initial premise that people are liquidating their 401ks. I'll tell you exactly. I literally just got off the phone with a woman in the state of Washington. She tells me she had one of those situations where there was an alarm going off on her computer. It scared the heck out of her. She called the Microsoft. They then forward her to the FBI. She's thinking she's helping the FBI, and she liquidates all of her money and moves it. So it appears, because she's liquidated this 401k, that she made $125,000 last year, which she didn't. It got stolen from her immediately. But the IRS says you made $125,000, so we would like the taxes on it, which she does not have because she took out loans as part of this whole theft. Now, but it's not just that. It is, okay, can I qualify for some assistance with this? Well, to do that, you have to show that last year you made less than this number. Well, they're saying you made $125,000. Well, no, she didn't. She's going to have Medicare problems because to qualify for Medicare, you need to be making less than this amount. Now they're saying you made $125,000. Yes,
I've seen that.
I was getting more and more frustrated for this woman as we were speaking because it's so backwards. And there are so many, it was like, but if you had knowingly gambled away this money, you would be tax exempt, right?
Correct.
So we've got it's all backwards and upside down. And I feel like there is a central group of do-gooders out there who are trying to help people like her. But to do that, we need to change laws. We need to do a lot of work.
Yes.
To make that happen. And so there's not enough do-gooders out there. And to do that work is expensive. That's one piece. So yes, you couldn't be more right about this tax situation. It's a major problem.
And my heart goes out to these women that I've spoken to because they just obsess about this tax liability. And of course, everyone has a fear of having the IRS on your back. So they're not only have been scammed and their hearts broken, but now they've got the fear that their own government is going to come after them for taxes.
Right. And so now
Insane.
let's talk about Colleen. So you've got a situation there where this entire crime is under investigated by the federal government. But now what you do have time to investigate is a woman who was duped into, and forgive my saying duped, but was mentally manipulated, psychologically tricked into moving money for this endeavor. And we're going to come after her.
Exactly.
We're not building the cases against the kingpins. We're not out there every single day trying to recover funds, but we're going to come after Colleen. And to me, that is a misuse of resources and just shows that we don't have our heads screwed on straight as far as what we need to be doing to fix this massive problem.
I absolutely agree. And you are one of those do-gooders, and I can't thank you enough. You really are. It's amazing what you're doing.
Thank you.
So take me through a typical day in Erin West life as the president of Operation Shamrock. What does your day consist of? What do you, like you said, you just got off the phone with someone. What does your calendar look like?
So my calendar, well, I had to take a minute to go to the bathroom when we started because I'd been on call all morning long. So my day, I usually start, I'm on the West Coast. And so my colleagues are up 3 hours before me. So I got to catch up. So usually
Correct.
I start calls as early as 6. I don't start earlier than that. And then in terms of calls, on Fridays, we do survivor stories. And so on Fridays, we have 2 one-hour blocks that we do, my team does, where we meet with the victim to try and understand what happened to you. How is this different from what we know? how are banks handling this? How is social media handling this? How is law enforcement handling it? And, we got a really good result today. Today, we heard from a woman who said, yes, my credit union really helped me. My credit union is BECU, and they really helped me. And so we love to hear that. And then we also hate to hear that I went to my local law enforcement and they said there was nothing we could do. Because that's what we do at Shamrock, is we try to build that capability within law enforcement. But this is how we get that information, is on Fridays, we hear this information. And then I just did a LinkedIn post about it to say, here's what I also heard. So we're sharing that information so that there's a lot of gatekeepers. Our whole problem with this entire crime is the gatekeeping, is I know a bunch of stuff and I'm not going to tell you banks. I'm not going to tell you social media. We need to be talking about this stuff all day, every day in a way of, here's what happened today. Here's the latest scam. So that this is not taboo information. This is how we protect ourselves and our loved ones.
So, on average, how many victims a week do you normally hear from?
Well, I'm a little bit more insulated from them than I once was when I was a prosecutor. When I was a prosecutor, it was a literal floodgate. I was hearing from so many people that were experiencing so much devastation. It was a lot. From where I sit today, the people who want to be heard go to someone else, and then they get scheduled on my calendar. So but I do get lots of people emailing me. I hear from lots of people every week that are really, and every single one is a tragic story, and every single one is the same thing, but a little different. And so it's amazing to me, difference in the iterations that these bad guys have figured out as ways to steal our money from us, and they are not stopping.
Erin, these people are foreign-based, they're foreign citizens, and I think they know the American population better than most Americans know themselves. The scam is brilliant. It really is a brilliant scam.
Brilliant. It's so clever.
Could you imagine if they would use that type of intelligence for something good? We could probably solve world hunger.
Honestly.
So on average, what would you say the breakdown is as opposed to how many men and how many women are scammed in a given year?
And I wish I knew the actual truth, because all we know is what gets reported, right?
Exactly.
And so it's hard to say. And I find this very interesting because I love people. I love studying people, understanding people. And I think that I talk to a lot of women. And do I talk to a lot of women because a lot of women want to talk about this?
Exactly.
Something bad happened and they want to process it with someone with an empathetic ear. I do talk to men. I talked to a man this morning, and he was exceptional, and he was exceptionally open about what happened to him. But I would say I personally talk to more women than men, but I can't say for sure that more women are being hit than men, because what I also know is that the scheme seems to play better for men in terms of the dropping of the attractive picture.
Yes.
It's a visual game, and
Yes.
I think that plays better. So honestly, I wish I knew the data, and I'm excited to tell you I have a friend, Ken Westbrook. He is one of the do-gooders, and he has commissioned a Gallup poll that he is about to reveal at the end of this month that's going to tell us what people said when they were interviewed. So I'm looking forward to finding out.
Wow. I'll look for that on your site. I'd love to post it across
Yeah.
to our page. We are really embarking on a new age right now with AI. Have you seen these scams? And AI, every 3 months, it's evolving at a rate that, say, technology would evolve at in a 10-year period back in the 1990s. So what is the newest scam that you're seeing? What twist are you seeing? I mean, we've got the oil rig worker, we've got the guy working in Dubai, but now with AI, they don't even need a trafficked victim to play the scam. It can all be created through the use of AI.
Absolutely, yes. So what that's going to mean is their ability to reach us is now exponentially increased. They can come up with a million different ways to get our attention because it's just bots doing it. It's just bots getting the attention. But, there are some really interesting things that have developed as a result of it. When I first started doing this, I would say, well, if you can't get them on the phone with you, then we know it's a scammer. Well, now they can clone any voice they want.
That's correct.
Then I used to say, well, if they don't get on a call with you, well, then they're definitely, a voice call, a video call. And now they can do that. I'll tell you, I talked to a victim not long ago, and he came to me and he said, I know who my scammer is. And I was like, fantastic. Let's find out more. And he's like, oh yeah, I even have her address in Los Angeles. And I'm like, tell me more. And he goes, yeah, it's Miss Malaysia 2019. And I'm like, why do you think that? And he said, well, here's her pictures. And I said, they use people's images. And he goes, I know, but I've had a video call with her and she has the mole just like Miss Malaysia. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. I want to tell you about deepfake technology now. And they can make anybody appear to be anybody. And it used to be that was expensive and difficult. And if you put your hand in front of your face, that would change it. But the way this technology is evolving, just like you said, Matt, now it's way better. It's way cheaper. Anybody can access it. And so we live in a time now where we need to tell all of our loved ones, you literally cannot trust anything you are seeing on the internet anymore. You can't.
Which is a shame, because it's become, for many of our people in our population, particularly the younger people under the age of 50, it's their main news source today.
Yeah.
It's scary. It really is scary. And then we're counting on Congress and the Senate to legislate this. And most of our Congress people are doctors, attorneys, salespeople, business owners. I mean, how many are actually technology savvy that they're going to be able to legislate this in a proper manner? So it's a massive learning curve.
Well, and I think that goes back to how well the enemy is playing this game. And they have chosen technology as a means of being very disruptive to our country. And they have chosen technology as a way of moving assets. And by doing that, they are using the fact that their targets, their victims, don't understand it very well. Their law enforcement doesn't understand it very well and doesn't know what to do with it. And Congress sure doesn't understand it yet and needs assistance before they start making bad legislation. And so the enemy, it was very, very cleverly done and continues to be cleverly done. And we are vastly underestimating their talent and their ability to play the long game here.
It's just going to be a scary ride. And I think we as Americans really have to buckle in. But I can't imagine, the days of the oil rig worker, I think, are long going to be over in the near future. Yeah, it's going to be very, very different. So let me move forward. I would like to talk about pig butchering, because a lot of folks that are watching today, listening today on the podcast, have no idea what this bizarre term means. Can you explain it?
Sure. And I will explain it specifically why I call it pig butchering. So pig butchering is the term that the organized criminals use. That's what they came up with. It's pig butchering. And the concept with pig butchering is this is like no romance scam you've ever seen. This is a romance scam / investment scheme where they are going to take every penny you have. The objective of pig butchering is it's a long con, and it doesn't stop until we've taken all your money and then gotten you to take out a loan to give us even more money. So the way it starts is particularly of interest to your viewers and listeners, that this person could show up on a dating app. They could show up and befriend you on the Meta platform or on LinkedIn or from a random text message. It's just a means of starting the conversation. And once you start that conversation, you are going to find yourself in a relationship with the most attentive, clever, interesting, moneyed person that you've ever come across. This person is going to do yoga. I always use Jessica as an example because their names are always Emma, Jessica, Anna. And Jessica for sure does yoga. She absolutely is going to take her dog on a dog walk. She is going to show you a picture of her legs in a bubble bath. She is going to show you a dream. She's going to sell you a dream that you could have, that a woman this beautiful and this successful, she's probably a jewelry designer in New York City, that you could have someone like that in your life. And as you're buying that, and I'll tell you, you don't buy it on day 1 or day 3 or day 7, but by the second week, you're really believing that this person gets you in a way that nobody's gotten you before. They really understand you. And then shortly thereafter, she says, you know how I afford all this? It's because I invest in cryptocurrency.
Exactly.
And I didn't know how to do that, but my uncle, who works at Goldman Sachs, does, and he could teach you. And then that begins the second part of this whole thing.
Exactly. Once the trust has been established.
Yes, that's exactly it.
That's the key. It's brilliant. It is absolutely brilliant.
That's exactly it.
And Erin, We'll continue on pig butchering in a minute, but I just want to pause for a second. We've done 4 different interviews with 4 wonderful women. And one common denominator that I see in all the women that have been interviewed is they are some of the kindest individuals that I've ever met. They have a heart of gold. I mean, they're right up there with Mother Teresa. These ladies are magnificent. What advice would you give to people that are right now today talking to someone online that they have been conversing with for months but have not met?
Yeah, I would say, so first of all, you're right on the money. I think what these predators prey upon is the very things that make us great and make us who we are. And that is, for the most part, we're trusting, we're loving, we want someone to share an experience with. And so and if they need help, we want to help them. And so I think that you've nailed that. Advice. Okay, so the advice I would give is this. I want everyone to understand that we are in a scamdemic. And by that, I mean we are the targets of a long game being played by organized criminals who have studied how to take advantage of us. And they are employing tricks, and techniques that are psychologically devised to get us to do things we wouldn't ordinarily do. And it's very chemical. It's very much, we're going to give you all the hormones of a new love. And there's something so intoxicating about that. And then when we add in the idea of you could also be wealthy, it's very difficult to compete with those hormones together. So advice I would give is be conscious that this is happening at scale, that I hope that you are in the loving relationship that you think you are, but I suspect you might not be if you haven't met this person in person. And the reason I suspect that is because I see this happening at scale, and I see the compounds in Southeast Asia that imagine a university campus stuck with 8 people to a room doing this all day, every day. That is the kind of climate that is happening in Southeast Asia that is targeting you. And so what you need to be really careful of is these people are out there hunting you. Don't allow yourself to be one of the hunted. Insist on an in-person meeting. And they will give you all kinds of well-crafted, scripted answers about why that can't happen. But you've got to have an in-person meeting with these people to really believe that you can properly advance your relationship.
Okay. And let's flip the coin. We, of course, get all the naysayers, the Monday morning quarterbacks. How could someone be so stupid? How could they fall for this? What would you say to those people?
I would say that today I spoke with someone with a degree and is healthily employed in the field of IT. Today I spoke with a woman who was a nurse for 35 years. These are not stupid people. I routinely speak to people who work in finance, who work in law, who have all kinds of advanced degrees. This isn't about being smart or dumb. This is about being susceptible to the tricks that they're going to play on you. And the trick is, if you are a human being who would like to have someone care about you and see you and take care of you, then you are susceptible to this crime. And it doesn't make you stupid, and it doesn't make you, there should be no stigma attached. We recognize it. We all want a loving relationship. And so that's who's getting caught in these crimes.
Exactly. And that's very well stated. It's very easy to be a Monday morning quarterback or to stand behind a keyboard and screen and yell out at someone that you really don't know the whole story and what's going on. So I appreciate you sharing your opinion on that. So getting back to pig butchering, from what I understand, there's victims on both sides of the screen. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
I sure can. In order to run the scale that's happening, you need to have someone on the other side of the computer, someone that is the chatter, someone that is drawing the targets in. And so to do that, transnational organized criminals realized that they needed to fill apartment buildings, dormitories with humans to do that work. And to do that, they're clever. They're at the right time, the right place. There's a huge unemployment problem in a lot of places on the globe, and particularly in Southeast Asia. And so they started off with they've got advertisements all over Meta. They've got recruiters saying, hey, I've seen the ads saying you can make $700 to $900 a month. Now those numbers didn't have any context for me until I met someone from Uganda who had been trafficked. He said, I was making $100 a month in my internet cafe, and a fellow Ugandan came in and told me those numbers. And I thought, well, I could die poor in Uganda, or I could give this a shot. And that's what you've got. You've got a 23-year-old man thinking, why not? In 6 months, I could make what it would take me 5 years to make in Uganda. And so when they show up, and so they go through job interviews, they do typing tests, they get their passports fast-tracked, they get a flight ticket, they arrive in Southeast Asia, and they are escorted into a massive walled compound with one gate that is manned with men with AK-47s. Their phones are taken, their passports are taken, and they're told, you're a scammer now, and that's what you will do 16 hours a day.
That is just amazing. And I know that you've had interaction with these people that are being trafficked, and I guess that is probably another cause when you started Operation Shamrock that you never thought would turn to that corner. Can you share that a little bit with me?
Absolutely. When I came to understand that in this year, in this time that we live in, that back in 2023, the number was from the UN, 250,000 people that were held in captivity in forced slavery doing this type of work. And when I went to Cambodia and I could stand right next to the wall where inside these people are being forced to do this work, I could stand across the river from where that was happening. It was really hard to believe. And then when I started hearing some of the stories of what does it take to make people do this work? Well, it takes electric cattle prods. It takes being beaten with baseball bats. That in order to get, I mean, think about it in your own, like, what would it take for them to make you do this to someone else? We're nice people. We don't want to do this. And it's absolutely horrific. So when I think about the ecosystem of pig butchering, it stems from the victim, the financial fraud victim, all the way across to the human trafficked victim that's forced to do this work. And the only winners are Chinese organized criminals that are making more money than we've ever seen anyone make ever in the history of ever.
So how does the hierarchy work in these scam compounds? I mean, is it very similar to what you would see at Microsoft as far as levels, executives, people that have jobs, people that have specific duties? What have you seen?
I used to think it was more like that. I used to think it was more of a tree. But what I'll tell you is inside these compounds, each floor is a company. They do what they can to normalize this. They have sales goals for these people to reach. They have a big boss of the company who has people that are under him, and then they have these long tables where everybody's working, and each table has a boss. And so there's all these bosses that report up to this boss, that report up to this boss, that report up to this boss, who pays essentially rent or an upward payment to the owner of the building. And so they are loosely affiliated. It's not as obvious as I thought. It's not as obvious as we could say, oh, that's Matt Russo's company over here. It's that could be Matt Russo's building, but it's got 10 companies in it that are paying to you. And they could be doing 10 different types of scams. It's what we're seeing is the industrialization, the whitewashing of this. This is a business. This is a business model, and that's how it works. And it's absolutely horrific that there is that kind of a shift, a geopolitical shift that is allowing that to exist in certain countries around the world.
It's amazing. Now, we know Cambodia is a hot spot for this. Where else? What other areas?
Right. So when I first started looking at this, the hot spots were Myanmar and Cambodia. From Thailand, you can look across the river into Myanmar and you can see the biggest compound that we knew when this all started, and that's called KK Park. And there are dozens and dozens that are visible from the Thai side of the border into Myanmar. Cambodia is huge in terms of how many buildings. I've been all over Cambodia. I've seen the construction. The buildings are insane. Additionally, Laos has a ton of this work going on. But what we're seeing as there is disruption, as there is pressure being put on Cambodia, it's like squeezing a balloon. And now we're seeing more activity in Laos, more activity in Sri Lanka. We've heard from our human trafficked friends. A lot of my people I was working with have now been moved to Madagascar. So we know that this is spreading. This is moving to places on the globe that will tolerate this and look the other way if the right amount of money is put in front of them.
It's just
It's a
horrendous.
growth industry.
It's horrendous. Tell me about some of the trafficked victims that you've come in contact with. I was looking at one of your documentaries, and you were actually trying to assist in helping this gentleman get out of a compound. Can you share a little bit of that story with me?
I sure will, because this is such a pivotal story to why I do what I do. I'm on a group text, and a letter got tossed into the group text that was, "Hi, I'm in a compound. I'm Ugandan. My compound is located at these geographical coordinates, and every day I scam Americans. Help me get out." And so I reached out to him. He gave me a WhatsApp number. He didn't respond. There was a number for his brother. I reached out to his brother, and then I got on the phone with his brother, and the brother wanted to vet, who are you? Like, are you legit? And so I got on FaceTime with him. I sent him articles about me. And once he was, over 2-week period, convinced that I was legit, then he let me talk to his brother who was inside. And I called him Sam at the time. His name is Shaquille. But Shaquille, what he told me, he kept sending me pictures. He would record things and send them to me. And he was telling me about how awful it was and how he was being tortured and how I have to go. I need to go scam Americans now. And I did what I could to talk about this crisis. And this started last summer, about this time last summer. And we talked and talked and talked until September. And then I didn't hear from him again. And by the time I spoke at a G7 event, and it was in December, I was convinced he was dead. And I spoke at that conference with him very much in mind and playing some of his audio and saying, this is why we fight. Because here's a guy asking for help. We know where he is. He's telling us what he's doing. Why are we not taking these seriously? And now I believe he's dead. And then, you won't believe it, but in mid-January, I get a text and he's like, you won't believe who this is. It's Shaquille. And I said, what's your brother's name? And he gave me his brother's name. And I was like, oh, you really are. And he's like, I got to get out of here. And so now he's back. And now I was able to talk to him, and I was able to see him in Cambodia. I've been to Uganda to meet some of his other brethren. We've got a global crisis. And there are human beings at the heart of what is happening here.
And is he currently still in a scam compound?
He got out.
Okay.
And he got back to Uganda. But I'll tell you, like, it's funny with the financial victims, like, the scam doesn't end when they realize it's a scam. Like, they're still processing so much trauma. And then for the human traffic, you're processing so much physical trauma, so much emotional trauma. So he's back home, but it's not easy to find a job there. And it's not easy to find a job when you left to go to greener pastures and now you want to come back. It's not easy for him.
You know, it's interesting. They tell these individuals that if you meet your sales quota, you'll get your passport back. And, you know, being in sales all my life, you never let go of a good salesperson. So I find it hard to believe. I mean, these people really have to run to get out of these places. There's trickery involved. No one is ever going to hand you back your passport if you're making them $10 million a month. Do you agree with that?
I do. I
So
do. And
how was he able to get out?
well, he got out in a essentially thanks to some work that was done by the U.S. government. So the U.S. government indicted one of the kingpins in October of 2025.
Okay.
And when they did that, one of those kingpins was very close to the ruling elite of Cambodia. And I think people got spooked and thought, now people are paying, oh, the U.S. is paying attention? Okay. And they can indict people? Oh, all right. And I know what happened then was a lot of the bosses said, I'm opening my doors. You guys want to leave? Go ahead. Knock yourself out. Go about your business. I'm going to Laos. If you want to come with me, great. I'll take you. Otherwise, And so what happened is there were a lot of people who were let go in Cambodia starting in the beginning of 2026. And the problem now is I gave you numbers before, and those were 2023 numbers. And so now there's probably 500,000 human trafficked workers in Cambodia alone that maybe are still working, maybe have been moved to another location, and a great chunk of them are like, okay, I'm wandering the streets. I don't have any money. Help me get home. So that's a whole new humanitarian crisis.
And was that a big reason of your trip in February back to Cambodia? Can you tell me what's going on right now in Cambodia?
Yeah, I went there because I had heard about this. I had heard from Shaquille that that's what his situation was, that he had been let out, and I wanted to go see him, and I wanted to understand, is this crackdown real? Like, because Cambodia, the government of Cambodia is saying, we're cracking down on this. And I want to see for myself. And what I saw, I always liken this to, we just had the Super Bowl in Santa Clara County. And when you have the Super Bowl in your town, I'll tell you what you do. You move your homeless people out. You clean stuff up. You paint. You make it look really good because the eyes are on Santa Clara County. And I think a lot of that is what's happening in Cambodia. If you go to the places that have been widely known, Chinatown, as this is human trafficking hub, you walk down the streets in Chinatown, yes, the lights are off. But I'll tell you what, there's a lot of scam bosses sitting along the street in cafes. And when we asked one of the women standing with a street vendor who is selling water, and we asked her in her native language, like, is this done? And she's like, no. So I think what we're seeing is there's just too much money for Cambodia to willingly give up this enterprise.
So
They're
what
not
we're
going to
saying,
let Laos have it. They're not going to let Malaysia have this.
without a doubt,
This is going to come back. And so that's what's happening.
So this is smoke and mirrors. So I want to talk about you making these trips over here. Now, you're 5 feet 2 inches. You probably have the bravery level of a Navy SEAL. You really do. And I watched your videos as you were arriving in the airport, and I could see the fear and apprehension on your face as you were talking into the camera. Do you travel with security? I mean, it's the old saying, squeaky wheel gets the grease, but in this situation, it may not be good to get the grease.
Oh, I hear you.
So
hear you.
What precautions do you take?
Yeah, I'm well aware of the bear that I'm poking, and it would not be wise of me to travel in an insecure way. So yes, I do have security. Yes, I do travel smartly, and I think the best way of saying it is I'm completely cognizant that I'm talking about organized criminals. And so, yes, I know that my choices need to be smart if I'm going to travel to these zones.
And I do. I remember in the video I saw yesterday, they actually had one of the bosses following you around. You reference him in the background of one of your photographs. Do they have a name for you there in the scam community?
I don't know. I don't know.
I just pray for your safety. And I was dying to ask you that question because I was so concerned about you traveling there, because you look like you're just there with another couple. And I'm thinking, I would have ex-military around me. I'd be fortified. So So in Cambodia right now, let's talk about what has happened. Was it our Justice Department that just seized $15 billion in big currency? Can you talk about that a little bit and what's going on?
Sure. I can tell you at the time that the indictment for Chenji was announced, also announced was the fact that the U.S. government was in possession of $15 billion belonging to him. And that's an amazing number. What that number is that is the potentially life-changing number for establishing the ability to really go after these bad actors, to really set up something for victims on both sides of this, to really set up the anti-scam center that our nation needs, to create a better online portal for people to report these scams and to have people on the other side that are analysts and ready to accept those. So I think that huge number is a gift. And the fact that we were able to secure that large amount of money, it should be used for good. And I see it as an amazing opportunity. Now, we'll see what happens to it. Chenji says, hey, you stole that money from me.
Of course.
And I want it back. And we do know that that money was part of something that happened pre-pig butchering. That money appeared to be something related to a Bitcoining mining operation he was doing in 2020. So lawyers will hash this out. We will see where this money ends up. But at the end of the day, I sure hope it ends up doing good.
I was surprised to see that Cambodia had turned him over to Chinese officials and not to U.S. officials. Were you
I wasn't.
No, so tell me about that. Why didn't the U.S. insist on having him extradited here?
So one of the factors that happens when when Chinese organized criminals are allowed to have such influence in camp, there's been a ton of money flow going to the ruling elite. There's been a ton of goodwill brought. And there's never an easy way to draw the line straight across from Chinese organized criminals to the CCP, to the party. But what we can see and what we see traditionally is that where these organized criminals are doing well, so too are Chinese businessmen and the Chinese Communist Party. So what things have happened while this has been going on, this organized crime business, this pig butchering business, at that same time, China has gotten access to and has built an airport with capability of handling military aircraft. They've also dug out a port that used to house U.S. warships. Now China has come in, improved the port, and China is docking its warships there. So there is a lot of behind the scenes activity connecting China and Cambodia in a way that the U.S. government is not. And so the relationship between China and Cambodia is much stronger. And so if China says, we want that guy, China's going to get that guy.
Okay, that explains it. I just couldn't figure out. So we've got this $15 billion and the courts are going to fight, is this romance scam money or is this pre-romance scam? Is it Bitcoin mining money? What would you recommend to our scam victims here in the U.S.? What type of paper trail should they keep in case legislation comes down and allows these victims to put claims in on this money?
Great question. So the best and only means that people have for staking a claim is to go to IC3. IC3 is the FBI's online portal where if you Googled FBI or how to report a crypto theft, it'll take you directly to ic3.gov. And at ic3.gov, that's where our victims announce themselves, put in all the information they have about the crime that stole their money. And then should there be an opportunity to divide some of that money, then their claim will have been staked.
Of course, they're going to have to show that their scam was from one of this cartel lords.
Tricky business, isn't it?
How do we do
That's the tricky business. I think the problem with all of this is that it was once a campfire, this pig butchering situation over in Southeast Asia. And we kept our head away from it for a long time and didn't look at it, and then came to find out, oh my God, we've got a forest fire burning out of control in Southeast Asia. And so to unwind and untether all this stuff is going to be insanely difficult. If we really decided anyone who was a victim of the Prince Group or Chen Ji is entitled to some of this money, I don't even know how you begin to make the connection. It's going to take analysts and expense and all of this. So do we end up in a situation where every scam victim, if you're able to prove you're a scam victim, is entitled to some compensation? I don't know. To be honest, the logistics of what that would take seems to me to be quite overwhelming. And don't think the U.S. government likes overwhelming things.
Exactly. I think they're a little inundated with overwhelming things these days.
Yes.
So let's switch over to Washington and the U.S. government. I know we had to reschedule our original date because you were sitting down with some senators. Can you tell me what is going on in our country regarding drafting legislation to protect our victims?
Yes. Here's the upside. Here's the upside of what I can say is that I've spent 4 years yelling about this and saying, hey, guys, we've got a major problem. And I feel like that's been heard, not just from me, but there's a lot of other people saying, hey, there's a big problem. So what we saw starting last year is a ton of litigation about the crypto ATMs, the kiosks, and people losing money by putting money in those kiosks. We've seen a lot of states ban them. We've seen a lot of states regulate them. There's been a lot of activity there. But what we're really seeing now is coalitions of legislators who are interested in stopping scams and looking at what are the specific things that need to get done in order to make that happen. And what I was talking about with Senate staffers yesterday was the Clarity Act. And the Clarity Act is not good for state and local law enforcement. It really puts the ability to help these victims in the hands of the federal government. And we know that that doesn't work that well for smaller individual cases. For the massive cases, great. They do a great job at that. But they're not going to be interested in taking a case where someone had 20,000 or 15,000 from them. Those are things that flourish in state and local government.
Exactly.
And what this act does is it really removes the obligations for crypto exchanges to have to be compliant with state and local. And so that's a disaster for victims. And so that was part of what we talked about yesterday was how can we see crypto. We know crypto's here. We know crypto has to be regulated, but don't count us out. And please allow us to show you examples of people who will be dramatically affected should this law go through.
So I know Senator Blackburn about 2 years ago had drafted something. What happened with her legislation? It seems to be stalled in the Senate.
I think so. I don't know the specifics on that. What I do know is there is a ton of interest. And specifically, one of her staffers has been in touch with me and has taken from me contact information that was willingly given from a number of victims. And they want to talk to 100 victims. They want to understand what is happening here. And so I think we're seeing more of that. I think everything seems to move at a glacial pace to me from where I sit. I want everything done yesterday. But what I can tell you is, yes, they're starting to get it. Yes, they're starting to understand what the problems are. They're starting to understand this tax piece is a major problem. They're starting to understand we are operating in silos in law enforcement. Nobody's talking to each other, and that's not effective. How can we legislate and mandate this to happen? And quite frankly, the fact that it has to be legislated is inane. We should be working together.
It is quite an attack on the American public as a whole today. So if you were drafting the legislation, what would you like to see in that?
So the first thing I want a better portal for ingesting scam victim information. I want a portal that is user-friendly and that when a victim, and I want it to have fields in it that can hold cryptocurrency addresses and WhatsApp numbers and URLs that they use to invest this money. And then what I want on the other side of that portal is I want an immediate thank you. Here's your claim number so that people have something to hold on to and don't think they've put this stuff in a black hole. And on the other side, I want analysts. I want analysts immediately triaging that information and thinking, oh, this goes with a Connecticut case we know about, or this looks like what's happening in Minnesota, and putting that together and determining, is there anything that can be immediately done to halt the movement of this money? And for that, I think we reorganized ourselves after 9/11. We realized that was a major misstep. And so we built these fusion centers across the United States to say, hey, we need to share information. Well, this is our economic 9/11. This is the 9/11 for the common person all over the U.S. And we need to treat it as such.
I was thinking that exact idea. It is. We have to pull together the way we had to pull together after 9/11. I mean, this is very important. And I'll tell you, without your efforts and your hard work, I don't think Congress or the Senate would even have a clue today.
You flatter me. Thank you.
No, I'm dead serious. And I've dealt with Congress. I've dealt with lobbyists up on the Hill. These things move at a snail's pace. They really do. And then if an administration changes, a Congress changes, then we start all over again. So what advice, Erin, would you give to a scam victim today that has just been scammed in the last 30 days?
Okay. So immediate thoughts about this victim. They need to report to 3 places. Number 1, their local law enforcement. Now, their local law enforcement may say, we don't know anything about this. We don't do crypto cases. you need to be your own advocate and make them take that report so they understand how big the problem is. Number 2, report to IC3 so that you are in what the FBI knows about this. Number 3, report to Operation Shamrock. So Operation Shamrock, that's my nonprofit. You can report right on the front page of my website. And the reason why I say that is we have trained investigators that volunteer their time off hours that will look at your report in real time and let you know, is there anything that can be done for it?
Wow.
So that's filling a gap that exists. We're providing you with an opportunity and with an answer. But,
that is amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, we call it our triage team, and we're very proud of them. And we've helped 300 people get information. And for some of them, we've been able to help them get their money back. For some of them, we've been able to at least get the money away from the bad guys.
And the address again, Erin, for someone listening?
That's operationshamrock.org.
.org. Okay, that's fantastic. And if someone is on the other side of the screen and they are being trafficked and forced to scam, what advice would you have for them? What hope could you offer them?
That there are people out there. That I am a very small cog in the wheel of people that are on the ground in Southeast Asia that want to help you and want to help get you home. And so reach out and be safe and protect your identity and protect yourself from anybody who might be watching you, but there are people that want to help you. And so reach out. Reach out to ops@operationshamrock.org or reach out to, anyone else that you can find online. There are some amazing organizations out there that are doing incredible work.
And if I were to ask you, where do you see yourself and Operation Shamrock 5 years from now?
Oh, that's a great question. I hope that I'm bored. I hope that nobody's calling me. I hope that we've got legislation passed and I don't need to be on your podcast because everybody knows. And everybody's like, we don't need to hear from Erin West again because we already know what she's going to say. But realistically, I hope that we have brought in awareness. I hope that people know what pig butchering is the way they know what the Nigerian prince is.
Absolutely. Erin, I cannot thank you enough for taking your valuable time to sit with me today. Again, what can we do to help you and to help Operation Shamrock? What do you need from us?
I need you to get loud. I need you to tell this story. So I always say when I'm speaking that I need you to go tell 2 friends today about this. And I never get in an Uber without having that discussion and saying, what scams are you seeing? Here's what I'm seeing these days. Tell your mom, tell your cousin, tell your kids what is happening out there. And then, so there are levels. That's level 1. That's baseline. I need you to do this. You're on notice. If you can do a little bit more, then post on your social media. Let your people know what's happening. And if you aren't comfortable with that, repost what I say. And then if you want to go a little higher than that, write to your Congress people and say, I know there's a problem out there and this is how I want you to help fix it. And then just start talking about it and get that information out of there. We need people standing up for what's right. And we need people standing up to help the people that can't stand up quite yet, who are still really suffering.
Is great. And if I could ask you, is there any more trips planned to Cambodia?
I'm not going to disclose where I may or may not be traveling, not Russo, but if you know me, you know that I am not done fighting.
Well, I would love to be your travel companion. So please keep me in mind. I would love to see this up front and personal. Again, Erin, I started this project on the podcast about 8 weeks ago. I had no idea what I was going to uncover. This is just mind-blowing in every aspect. So, Erin, thank you so much for being with me today. If I can ever return the favor, please don't hesitate to call. Whatever I can do to get the word out, and I will keep you in my prayers and my thoughts. And again, I think you deserve the Presidential Medal of Honor for what you're doing. I really do. So, to our viewers, thank you for tuning in today. And remember, we're not just dating, we are dating to win. And I will see you on the next episode.
Thanks for listening to Dating to Win. If you're serious about improving your dating game, don't miss an episode. Hit the subscribe button or go to youtube.com/datingtowin25. Good luck out there, and we'll see you on the next episode of Dating to Win.